Hello and welcome to another ShoddyCast creator commentary. I'm Charles Battersby. I'm the screenwriter who wrote just about all of seasons 1 through 3, and I wrote this final 6-episode story arc of season 4. So this episode is called The Crying. That's a joke because the last episode was called It's All Over But the Crying. Get it? It's a lot funnier when you realize that this was supposed to be a double-sized episode. So this was supposed to be the last episode, but we ended up breaking it into 2 episodes. Now, one of the reasons we call it The Crying is that this episode is a little more serious than the previous work we've done. It's an attempt to be dramatic, and we have our wholesome family here before the war. And we have the reveal that Nora has gone from a happy housewife with her husband and child and robot butler to the grizzled soul survivor that we know from the game. And one of the things that I've often complained about with Fallout 4 is that we don't get to see enough of the pre-war world. They've got all these cool assets for a pre-war town, and then we only get to see it for a few minutes, and most of that time is being guided around this one little house, then forced to run directly to the bomb shelter. So I wanted to put in a little more time where we see the pre-war characters together. When we were producing this, we were hoping to get a bunch of voice actors, including Brian Delaney, who plays the male soul survivor. So one of our original ideas would have been to have Nate and Nora doing pre-war stuff before the spouse dies. One of the other things we'd hoped to have was recorded messages from your dead spouse that the storyteller and Tanner might find over the course of the adventure. But we couldn't get as many voice actors from the game as we'd hoped. It's awesome that we got Wes and Courtney to do this, and I think that the story we ended up writing is a really good one that shows us enough of this character's life and the changes they've gone through. Oh, and that line there about, the unfrozen cave woman. There used to be a Saturday Night Live sketch called Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer. So this is a little reference to that Nora was a lawyer before the war happened. Ha ha ha! Terribly clever. And now that we have the Soul Survivor meeting our little fanfiction characters who are from the West Coast, there's some stuff where we see, the Soul Survivor is this rube that's been living in a hole in the ground, and she still sees all this as the future, and she doesn't really know much about the world aside from what she's gathered from the Boston Commonwealth. And I just love the line there, did your dog just talk? Because, hey, we're used to having Daisy talk, but I guess everybody else in the world would be a little surprised when they meet Daisy, wouldn't they? That's only natural. So we do have a few lines here where it's like, California? Didn't that fall off into the ocean? And she's never seen cyber dogs or talking animals before, so a lot of the stuff that we as fans of the Fallout series know about the world, she has no clue whatsoever. She's just learning all this right now. And some of this dialogue is specifically to tie in exactly at what point in Fallout 4 this is occurring. So she's met the Brotherhood of Steel, she hasn't gotten into the Institute yet, she's rounded up just about all the storylines within Nuka World, because we know she got that door open, and she's killed all the raiders. So now we're establishing this is more or less the end of the Nuka World storyline. Oh, hello, sexy. So this is a fun piece of animation. We get to see our villain, who, he's a little sexier than he is scary in this shot here. And if you watched all of Season 3, you've seen him before, you know what he's like. I think this is an interesting way for the animators and the editors to introduce us to the character. That quote about the valley with my head's enemies mounted on spears, that's a quote from the first Fallout game, which you would only get that if you chose a particular line of evil dialogue. So that's some super obscure Fallout trivia that you can throw out the next time you like, and it's a fun quote too. And once we go back to our team, we have Nora getting up to date on the events of our little fan fiction story. I wanted to save the exposition for off-camera scenes. And because Nora really doesn't know anything about the wider world of Fallout, she's a little contemptuous of everything outside the Commonwealth, where she's, the apex predator badass. And she's got that line there, shoot a man just for snoring too loud. There really was a famous gunfighter in the West that allegedly did that. And if you turn on the closed captioning, you'll see that that line is written in phonetic Western dialect. Shoot is spelled S-H-E-W-T. Shoot a man just for snoring too loud. And again, a lot of the ideas in this final storyline were things that I had tried to cram somewhere into a ShoddyCast project. The idea of an Unstoppables series, where it's just the Unstoppables running around having superhero adventures, was something I tried to get ShoddyCast to do. They wouldn't let me do it. So I did create the "It's Unstopping Time" catchphrase, and a lot of the other stuff that we hear referenced by the Silver Shroud. It's stuff that it would have been in my little fanfic about the Unstoppables. This sequence with the malfunctioning robots was one of the things I loved writing, and I think it goes on a little too long, but I had a lot of fun writing this, and hearing the voice actors do it was great. And for those of you that didn't listen to the commentary track for the last episode, the Arnold Schwarzenegger voice you hear there, that's Jason, who does the voice of the Storyteller. There's quite a few episodes in Season 3 where there's 3 guys talking in one scene, and they're all Jason, and you wouldn't know it. When I played Fallout 4 for the first time, I didn't do the Silver Shroud quest. I just plowed through that critical path to the main storyline. Then when I went through it a second time, I discovered that you could dress up as the Silver Shroud, and you could make Courtney or Brian do the Shroud voice. And once I did that, once I got Courtney in the Silver Shroud outfit, I chose Speak as Shroud every time I could. And this scene here, where there's 2 Shrouds talking to each other, it was a lot of fun for me to write. I'm a playwright, aside from writing the ShoddyCast series, and one of my plays is about superheroes in the 1940s, so a lot of the dialogue that I write for that is people speaking this heroic gibberish, and having a chance to write 2 different characters that are both speaking like this was a real joy for me to write it, and then hearing Courtney and Wes actually doing the dialogue was even better. So this is another scene where maybe there's a little too much of them talking like the Shroud, and a little too much of them going into the extended imaginary Unstoppables universe that I've created, but I had a blast writing all of this. And some of it is done in the same style of, a 1940s radio show, but a lot of it is also done in the style of the 1960s Adam West Batman show, which I love, and also the 1990s Tick cartoon. So there's a blend of different kinds of super heroic gibberish in creating all of this dialogue. And among my favorite lines of dialogue in this episode are the ones that end this with, "Justice has its own regional dialect, and loyalty has a wet snout." So now that the fun part is over, we get back into the actual plot line of the episode, where the characters discuss the villain's secret plot that our cyborg V13 wants to clone a body for himself and transfer his real brain into a fully human body. And when we see that once again the cloning experiment has gone wrong, we get a little line of dialogue here about the Frankenstein story. And when this first aired, someone in the comments was like, "That's not the real message behind Frankenstein. The true message behind the Frankenstein story is that the creator who made the misshapen monster, well, the creator is the real monster here. But I deliberately wanted this villain to misinterpret the Frankenstein story. And although he fails to realize he's the villain of his own storyline, he was clever enough to bring a large supply of underpants and vault jumpsuits with him when he embarked on his evil scheme." And that brings us to our cliffhanger. So I'll be doing a commentary for the final episode of Season 4. Patreon subscribers, stick with us for a couple more weeks and you'll be able to hear that. And of course, I'll be going back to do commentary tracks on other episodes from previous seasons, so if there's an episode from a previous season that you would like to hear, just let us know, or if you'd like to hear from other members of the creative team, just let us know.